Hello again, and welcome back to the show. This week, I want to talk to you guys about what is probably the most dreaded and hated aspect of physical preparedness, and that is cardio. Depending on my coaching schedule, I might handle anywhere from 10 to 20 clients, and I can confidently say that 100% of them want to be more physically capable, but only about 40% of them are willing to do hard, consistent conditioning training. And I want to talk to you about why that is, why it's so important that you be conditioned, even if you don't like running, specifically running, and how you can change your relationship with cardio so that it goes from something that you hate and dread to something that, at the very least, you are willing to do consistently, and best case scenario, ideally, you actually begin to enjoy at least a little bit. Now, it's probably obvious to most people why a lot of guys fall in love with lifting in their training, but not running. When you lift, there's very immediate gratification from week to week, especially if you're a beginner. You can see yourself doing 185 last week and 205 this week. We've all experienced a good pump, and you can feel your muscles swell up, and you notice an aesthetic change when you lift, not to mention picking up heavy weight off the floor or pressing it overhead feels good, it looks good, it's a big confidence booster, and it's great for the ego. You don't really get those things from lifting. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You might feel like you look pretty cool and you might feel pretty good about yourself picking 405 off the floor, but trying to go for a mile run, you're covered in sweat, you're breathing like you're about to have a heart attack. If you have an excessive amount of body fat on you, there's lots of jiggling going on. And lifting is a really short duration, high intensity activity relative to running. Running can feel like it just goes on and on and on. And so, for those reasons, it's easy for guys to fall in love with the weights and really put off cardio for years and years. But that's a huge problem, because if our goal is to be more physically prepared so we can handle worst case scenarios, we know that cardio, specifically the ability to run, is one of the most important factors in that type of situation and our ability to react to it. You can be a muscular, strong, relatively in shape guy, meaning that you don't have a lot of excess body fat on you. But if you try and go and do something that requires a good amount of athleticism, whether it's going to the range and maybe trying to run around while you're putting rounds on target, or you're going into a martial arts class where there's grappling and striking involved, you discover very quickly that cardio is the limiting factor, and you're not able to use all that strength and all that muscle that you've built because the conditioning and the endurance isn't there. And I've had pretty intimate experience with this over the years. I don't have a belt in jiu-jitsu. I'm not a martial artist or an expert or anything like that, and I don't claim to be. But as a hobbyist, I've done a good amount of hard sparring and hard grappling over the years. And I've had times where I was out of shape going into those sparring sessions, and times where I was in shape because I was sprinting really, really hard. And then later in the week, after my sprints, I would maybe go on like a 1 to 3 mile run, which at the time was a long distance for me. And going into a session where you're going to be doing anywhere from 5 to 10 rounds of sparring that are going to be kind of hard, but you're in really good shape, it's a world of difference. My skill level, like I said, has never been high. I've always been just a casual hobbyist. But when I was out of shape, I was basically a punching bag. Anybody of any skill level could basically just dance around me, even though I was usually relatively bigger and stronger. They would just dance around me, punching, kicking very easily, and I was kind of useless. When I was in shape and pushing my conditioning, specifically my running, very hard, I could, I won't say do well, I could hold my own with people whose skill level was above my own, meaning that I got in a few good punches and I didn't take nearly as much damage as I normally would had I not been in shape. And when I would go with somebody who was similar skill level to me, I would do really, really well. And those experiences really helped me understand at an emotional level, because it's one thing to understand the importance of cardio intellectually, but to feel how important it is and to feel what it's like to have somebody be punching you in the face or controlling you on the ground and just not being able to move and just wanting to quit and just saying in your head, just let it be over, let it be done. It's a terrible feeling. And I've had that feeling in the gym and out of the gym in less than pleasant interactions. And if you are a firefighter or a cop or you've been in the military, you've had those experiences in a much harsher environment of pushing yourself to failure and past and feeling the gas tank be empty. And it's a terrible feeling because your opponent has complete and total control over you once you get to that point where you just can't breathe anymore and you're so tired that you quit. Chael Sonnen has a great quote from an interview years ago where he says, "I have seen champions break and become cowards in a practice room." And he's talking about fatigue. He's talking about conditioning. You reach that point where you just have nothing more to give. And if you felt that breaking point where you had nothing more to give in a practice room or in a sport, and you know how terrible it is, imagine how terrible it is to reach that point in a violent situation, in a situation where people are counting on you. And so all types of running are really important for you to build your overall cardiovascular endurance, but also a lot of people don't appreciate how weak and sensitive the lower portion of their body is until they actually start running consistently. You need to build up the work capacity and the strength in your feet and ankles and Achilles and calves to be able to have the ability to run long distances or short distances quickly. And I've worked with a good number of guys over the years who are really strong and in good shape, but they're very surprised to find how fragile and weak their feet, ankles, and calves are because they haven't run consistently and their body doesn't have that work capacity. It reminded me of a video I saw a few weeks ago of Mike Israetel doing a Special Forces fitness test that included an 800-meter run. And Mike says in the video that he's in pretty good shape because he does a lot of jiu-jitsu. And if you're doing 5 to 10 5-minute rounds of grappling, that's a lot of cardiovascular work. And so he's in pretty good shape. He's obviously very muscular and strong, but the limiting factor was his calves. At the end of the video, he says, "Man, my calves are so tired. They're really tight." And so even though he's this very strong, capable guy, he was limited by the work capacity in his feet and in his calves. And even the Special Forces guy that ran the 800-meter with him and ran it much, much faster, towards the end of the video, he pulls his Achilles or like strains a muscle in his calf or something like that. And so even though he was this really strong, in shape guy who was very athletic, a Special Forces guy, that Achilles or that calf, whatever it was that went wrong for him, that was the limiting factor in the event for him. And he had also done like a broad jump prior to that, so that probably played a role. I'm not hating on the Special Forces guy or Mike Israetel. I'm just pointing out the very important fact that for both these strong, athletic, in-shape guys, what was the limiting factor? It wasn't their cardiovascular endurance. It was the work capacity in their legs, specifically their calves, Achilles, and feet. So the endurance is important. Running's going to give it to you, but you have to build up the lower portion of your body to actually be able to carry you those distances. Or if you have to run fast, the work capacity needs to be there as well. So even though there's lots of different ways to improve your overall cardiovascular health and fitness, you have to run so that you have that work capacity in your lower body. You have to be able to transport yourself from place to place. You have to be able to change position quickly. In armed or unarmed combat, in a disaster scenario, it's absolutely crucial for you to be able to stay mobile. So I get it. People don't like running. That's why they skip it for years at a time, even though they know it's important. But realistically, you can build up a good amount of work capacity and endurance with under an hour of relatively challenging running in a week. And I've had success with this over and over again over the years, where somebody will come to me, they want to be better prepared and in better shape, but they're still very hesitant to run. They really don't want to do it. And I basically have to peer pressure them into running by explaining how important it is and then telling them we're going to start off with really, really easy runs. Everybody's a little bit different, but I just have them start by either doing a mile at a very, very easy pace or working them up to the point where they can comfortably run a mile at an easy pace without their knees or their feet bothering them if they're heavier. And once they get to the point where they can manageably run 1 to 2 miles at an easy pace, I'll just have them do that every week, once a week, because they're still getting a little bit of something out of it. And they're building the habit of just saying, hey, I do cardio every single week. And what you'll see is that the mile time slowly starts to go down. Each week, they'll knock off like 5 seconds, 3 seconds. Sometimes if they're feeling good, they'll go a little bit faster and they might knock off 30 seconds or 15 seconds. But we're building the relationship with running and they feel good about it because they're making progress even though they started in a place where their effort level was very bare minimum. And once you start to see progress with something and you start feeling better about something, it becomes very easy to do more of it because you know that more of that feeling is coming. And after the first 3 to 6 weeks, I'll usually add in some type of sprint workout on a secondary day. Again, it's a sprint workout, but it's not going to be that crazy. It's going to be just a little bit faster than what their easy run pace would be. And the whole point is to spike their heart rate and get their lower extremities, their feet, calves, Achilles, and everything used to producing more force and absorbing the impact of their body weight as they try and run a little bit faster. But it's so easy to introduce that because we've already built the relationship with the easy runs. We've built some confidence there. And now we're shifting over to what's more intense, but the duration is so short that it's almost impossible to skip over. You're talking about a 10-second sprint with a 50-second rest, or a 30-second sprint with a 30-second rest, depending on the athlete. And I've been able to use this approach over and over again to help guys go from not wanting to run, giving me excuses as to why they can't run. And 3 months later, they're doing 2 run workouts a week. One's long distance and one's a sprint workout. And they feel great. They're making good progress. They're knocking minutes off their mile time. And they start talking about, I want to do this run goal next. I want to start sprinting. Because they're seeing the success, they've built their relationship with running, and now they're full steam ahead. They want to make progress and they want to get better. Please, guys, don't skip your cardio. Get out there, try and run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't run fast, run slow. But it's so important for you to develop the capacity to run. It's an essential thing that you're going to need to do when we're talking about responding to worst case scenarios and being capable. Thank you guys for listening. If you like the video, please like and share with your fat, out of shape friends, and I will see you next time.